Times Square bomb suspect went back to Pakistan looking for help from the Taliban. That dramatic claim made today by a senior administration official who says Faisal Shahzad had an attack in mind when he traveled to Pakistan. And top advisors to the president also say the evidence now shows the plot was directed by the Pakistani Taliban. This development comes amid a big debate over the handling of terror suspects here in the United States. Should they be read their rights, or should the rules be stretched to allow investigators more leeway? Brian Todd has been looking into this story for us. Brian, tell us what you're learning.
Wolf, this is all about the last two prominent terror cases on U.S. soil, the Christmas Day plot and the Times Square attack. Both suspects kept talking after being read their Miranda rights, but there's real concern out there. What if they didn't? Times Square bombing suspect Faisal Shahzad was interrogated for 4 hours before being told he had the right to remain silent, his Miranda rights. Anything he said up to that point could be used against him in court. That process of gathering information is called the public safety exception to Miranda, used when officials fear there's an immediate threat to public safety. Now, the Obama Justice Department wants Congress to help it expand the use of that tactic. On NBC's Meet the Press, Attorney General Eric Holder called it big news.
We have to think about perhaps modifying the rules that interrogators have and somehow coming up with something that is flexible and is more consistent with the threat that we now face.
That public safety exception to Miranda was first used in standard criminal cases long before the war on terror. When we asked why the Justice Department wants to expand this rule now, a spokeswoman here said she couldn't go beyond what Attorney General Holder said. But some legal analysts say the administration believes now, with the Shahzad case and the Christmas Day airline attack, that it could use more time to interrogate terror suspects and get information on plots. Shahzad and Christmas Day suspect Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab were both read their Miranda rights. Both kept talking, but either one could have clammed up at that point, and the plots behind their alleged attacks might never have been divulged. Former White House aide David Rivkin is a critic of the Obama administration's terror policies and favors military tribunals. He says this about Holder's idea.
You need enough time in an interactive mode to get all the information out of the suspect. You don't know in advance, you may not even know after a few hours. You may need some time to go back and check.
Stephen Vladeck, who has represented terror suspects before the Supreme Court, says more exemptions on Miranda will eat away at suspects' rights. What about just the fact that, we're now dealing with terrorism suspects? These aren't common criminals, and you've just got to inject a little bit more flexibility into the system.
Well, to me, the flexibility that the government is seeking in these cases is provided by the public safety exception and has existed for 25 years. But beyond that, I think the fact that many of these suspects are U.S. citizens, that most of them are arrested on U.S. soil, means there are and must be limits on exactly how much the government can bend the traditional rules.
Now, liberals like to point out that the Bush administration read terror suspects their rights too. Shoe bomber Richard Reed was promptly Mirandized in 2001. But conservative advocates say even if it was done under Bush, it's still a mistake that can tie the hands of counterterrorism investigators when the clock is ticking, Wolf.
But I think it's fair to say, Brian, that any serious attempt to limit Miranda rights right now would wind up at the Supreme Court.
It could, and it could be struck down by the court. In 2000, the court struck down a statute that overruled Miranda. The statute essentially allowed prosecutors to use statements that defendants made voluntarily before being read their rights. And some analysts believe that if Congress gets involved, as Mr. Holder wants it to do, that the Supreme Court's never going to go for that. It's not going to really go for a congressional interpretation of the Miranda law.
Brian Todd, thanks very much.